Imagine waking up in your childhood bed, but something is just violently wrong.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
you can't feel your left arm at all, and there's this ghostly breeze pushing against your eardrums, but nothing in the room is actually moving.
It's completely still.
Exactly. And you look to the foot of your bed for some kind of comfort, right? But your own mother's face begins to grotesquely melt into the striped wallpaper.
Oh, man.
And meanwhile, a man you barely know is illegally pumping experimental chemicals into your veins while literally debating whether or not to amputate your lifeless limb. Welcome to the deep dive.
It is a lot to process.
It really is. Today, we're plunging straight into the haunting, just intensely atmospheric middle section of Part 1, Chapter 1 of the novel In Darkness We Sleep. And our mission here is to decode the architecture of a mind under siege.
Under siege is probably the best way to put it. It's this profound psychological labyrinth. We're looking at a protagonist, Jason, whose entire perception of reality has just been shattered by trauma. And the author places you, the reader, directly behind his eyes as he tries to navigate the fallout of that.
Right. So to get you fully situated in the precarious reality of this narrative, just to catch you up, Jason is a soldier. He survived this massive, still unexplained accident in Iraq.
Right.
And he spent 2 years in a coma at Columbia Hospital in Denver. But the clinical safety net is gone now.
Completely gone.
Yeah. He's been secretly, illegally transported out of that hospital and moved back to his childhood home. He's lying in his absent father's old bed, surrounded by, dark, stained 1980s furniture, and he's hooked up to this clandestine 3B drip.
And that physical setup, that's really the foundation for everything we're going to explore today. You have this sterile, high-stakes medical apparatus like the IV stand, the chemical drip superimposed right over the deeply nostalgic, emotionally loaded space of a childhood bedroom.
Yeah, and I look at this environment and, I don't see a sanctuary of healing.
No, not at all.
I see a hostage situation. It feels like a clandestine, off-the-books safe house where standard medical ethics have just been completely suspended.
Yeah, that creates an immediate suffocating tension.
Right.
Part 3. Gloria held a cordless phone up to her ear as she looked over her sleeping son's body to ensure his chest was rising and falling. A habit she formed when her son was at Columbia Hospital. He's been doing fine, Willie. Good. He's been slipping further out each day. We may have to up his doses to keep him from going back into the coma. I've seen people slip back in and even die. Will his memory ever come back? That's my biggest concern. He doesn't know anything about the accident. Oh, I think so. It can take a long time, but I would keep trying. His mind could be intentionally suppressing the memory. He might not be ready for the whole story to come out. Let him heal first. Oh, how's his arm? Still no feeling all the way up to the shoulder. He said he could feel my fingers just below his underarm, but not on the arm itself. He might lose it. Willie, don't say things like that. Sorry, but he'll want to see someone about it. A dead limb needs to come off. It's warm, she insisted. Okay, Gloria, I understand. Watch for gangrene, bruising of the fingertips, or the tissue on his forearm. We don't want him to die from the arm. It's still perfect, Willie. It's likely nerve damage. He took a hard fall, and his spine may have been injured even though they didn't find anything. Some doctors look in the obvious places, but don't use their heads. Dr. Wells is no exception. Once he saw Jason was in a coma, he chalked it up as a coma. He never figured your son would wake up. That's what I thought. When Jason woke up, I asked Dr. Wells if he had checked Jason's arm, and he disregarded me. Figures. I knew there was something in his spine or head, but he wouldn't. I know, some doctors. I have no respect for him. He could provide the best care to one patient and treat another one like shit. Sorry. Keep going, Willie. He just let your son lay there and die. Some doctors don't want to spend any time on hopeless cases. It contradicts their belief that they're here to provide healing. For Jason, there was no way for the body to heal unless he was awake. Wells was certain your son was going to die within the next few years, so he stopped caring. Well, you knew better, Dr. Willie. Willie immediately corrected. I'm no doctor. I know, but you should be. You're a real fine medicine man. After Gloria spoke the words, she realized it might be offensive to Willie to use such a stereotype. Sorry, I think you would make a fine doctor. You're kind, Gloria. Medicine man is my title on the Ute Reservation, but it works in this case too. The modern world, as we call it. We live in a time where medicine and health is in the hands of the insurance companies. Even Dr. Wells has to choose a patient to care for, and which to ignore. I think he was going to get flack from the Army for taking care of Jason, since they were paying for his care. They stopped paying for his care when he got to Denver. Oh. Gloria switched the phone to her other hand. I have to run and get my son up. Part 4. Jason woke to see the lantern hanging from the ceiling was swaying again. The walls echoed with laughter. He was awake, but dreaming. Gloria was standing at the foot of his bed. Her face and head was grotesquely distorted. He blinked to clear his vision, but that only made the image distort further. It was better to stare. He pushed himself up in bed, and Gloria vanished into the wallpaper. The walls giggled at Jason's reaction. He shook his head and closed his eyes. Very funny. The air moved around him like a warm ghost, slightly pushing at his eardrums. It was a phantom breeze which came from the walls. His eyes fell on a dresser across the room, and a drawer handle dropped onto the floor. Everything sitting on top of the dresser, artificial flower arrangement, small clock, a photo in a silver frame, all started to melt into a colorful soup. The room started to lean back, and the window glass popped out of the panes and, instead of breaking, drifted off across the front yard. Jason's right hand clenched the mattress as the room leaned back the other way, springing the door open, which came off the hinges. The laughter began to grow louder. Jason's head started to swell and became really heavy. He closed his eyes tightly to keep from seeing the inevitable explosion. He lay back down, and the walls laughed. Part 5. Jason looked at his father driving down the Denver city streets. His father was dressed in a light gray suit, staring at the road ahead of them. This time, Jason didn't look at the road, just kept his stare at his father's crow's feet. He didn't know how long the drive would be, but it had to end sometime. Jason waited. The man on the road never appeared. His father never drove through the man. But they eventually stopped. They were pulled over on a curved road. which cut through acres of grass. He knew where they were, a special place Mom had never been. A place for the men, his father would say. Just 20 minutes by car, they would reach the east end of the Morrison-Denver Cemetery on the highway leading out the north end of Denver. The ground was covered with the morning mist, or a dream mist, that Jason always encountered in his childhood dreams. The dream mist was a boundary between the here and now and wakefulness. Even as a boy, Jason knew the limits of the dream world. Beyond those limits, where the mist grew dark, there was nothing. Now, the mist gathered just outside the arched iron gates, behind the car, and circled around a collection of marked graves and a modest mausoleum. The building was a very low concrete structure with narrow stained glass windows and steps leading down to the main doors. Beyond the building were ominous dark trees, creating the edge of the dream. Jason's father walked from the blue sedan towards the cluster of grave markers. Jason followed, knowing his left arm was aching. He rubbed his right hand over the dead arm and felt a sensation of touch. He felt his hand on his arm. They reached the graves, each one marked by a flat stone with a bronze plaque embedded into it. The markers were stained by pollution. Jason remembered this moment, looking down at the grave of Emily Matherson. "In loving memory," it read. Jason felt no emotion, but his father was brought to his knees as soon as he laid eyes on the marker. Jason never knew Emma. She was his grandmother, Dad's mother. He saw pictures of the large and jolly woman holding Dad as a baby suspended over a birthday cake, but couldn't remember seeing any Christmas or birthday photos of himself. She was from some town in southern Illinois. He didn't know where, but Mom would know. The stone said she died in 1976. Since Jason was born 3 years later, he would never have known her. Makes sense, he thought. Suddenly, his father collapsed. Jason jumped to action. Jason's oversized body with a soldier's mass and strength, still in a 7-year-old boy, was able to steady the man. For a moment, Jason's mind took him to the reality of that. His arm may still be dead, just not here. He's only 7 after all. His father's body felt like an empty thing, becoming more weightless, and slowly faded into nothing. Jason never felt so alone.
And we enter the scene with this deeply unsettling phone conversation between Jason's mother, Gloria, and a man named Willie.
Yeah, that phone call is intense.
And right away, the author gives us this detail that perfectly illustrates the psychological toll this has taken on Gloria. She's holding a cordless phone, but she's completely fixated on Jason's chest. She is habitually counting the rises and falls to make sure he's breathing.
It's a perfect illustration of how trauma doesn't just happen to the patient.
Right.
It infects the caregiver.
Oh, absolutely.
Gloria has been living in this state of extreme hypervigilance for 24 straight months. When you're watching a loved one hover between life and death for that long, your autonomic nervous system gets rewired.
Like your baseline just becomes panic.
Exactly. Your baseline state becomes panic. Every breath Jason takes is a temporary victory. Every slight pause is a potential catastrophe. So even though she's managed to get him out of the hospital and, quote unquote, safe in his own home, her brain is still fundamentally operating in the ICU.
Right. She's experiencing a form of ambiguous loss. I mean, he's physically present in the room with her, but the son she knew is psychologically absent.
Yeah.
And on this phone call, the news Willie is delivering is just grim. He tells Gloria that Jason has been slipping further out every day.
Right, those are his exact words. Slipping further out.
Yeah. He warns her that they might need to aggressively increase his drug doses just to keep him from sliding permanently back into the coma.
And Gloria's immediate response really reveals where her priorities lie in all this.
Yeah, what does she say again?
Well, she doesn't ask about his heart rate or his kidney function. She asks, will his memory ever come back? He doesn't know anything about the accident.
Wow. Yeah, and Willie's answer to that is fascinating. He suggests that Jason's mind might be intentionally suppressing the memory of the trauma.
Yes.
He explicitly frames it as a defense mechanism, telling her to, let him heal first. it raises this huge question about how the brain manages catastrophic overload. I mean, is it biologically possible for the mind to just firewall an entire section of memory to keep the body functioning?
It actually is. And we see this in clinical psychology through the lens of dissociative amnesia.
Okay.
Let's look at the mechanics of how that actually works. So the hippocampus is essentially the brain's librarian.
Real librarian, got it.
Yeah, it takes short-term experiences and files them into long-term memory. But during a catastrophic, life-threatening trauma, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, sounds an absolute deafening alarm.
It's just a total system override.
Exactly. It floods the entire nervous system with cortisol and adrenaline. And when those stress hormones reach a critical threshold, they can essentially short-circuit the hippocampus.
So the librarian gets knocked out.
The librarian is completely knocked out. The memory of the trauma isn't properly filed. It's scattered, fragmented, or locked, entirely out of conscious retrieval.
So Willie is suggesting that this isn't just a byproduct of the head injury. It's an active, ongoing triage by Jason's own nervous system.
Precisely. Willie is proposing that the body is so physically devastated that if the mind were forced to simultaneously process the sheer emotional horror of whatever happened in Iraq, the metabolic and psychological cost would be fatal.
The system would just crash.
An entire system would crash. The 2-year coma was the ultimate system-wide shutdown. And now that Jason is slowly regaining consciousness, the amnesia is a localized shutdown. The brain is holding the trauma at bay to buy the physical body time to mend.
Right. But the physical body is fundamentally broken.
Very broken.
And this is where the conversation between Gloria and Willie turns incredibly dark, because they start arguing about Jason's left arm. He took a severe fall, and the arm is completely paralyzed.
Right. No feeling at all up to the shoulder.
Yeah, no feeling at all. But Gloria's reaction to this is pure, profound denial. She insists to Willie that the arm is warm. She literally calls the paralyzed limb perfect.
We are seeing the limits of Gloria's psychological endurance here.
Yeah.
She's already lost the core identity of her son to the coma and the amnesia.
Yeah.
She simply cannot integrate the idea that she is going to lose physical pieces of him as well.
It's just too much.
It is. She's clinging to the aesthetic illusion of his physical wholeness because it's the only aspect of his existence she feels she can still protect.
Willie, on the other hand, refuses to indulge that illusion. I mean, he is chillingly pragmatic about it.
Very cold.
He tells her point blank he might lose it. He commands her to actively check for gangrene, to look for bruising or blackening around the fingertips, and then he delivers this brutal, uncompromising line. He says, a dead limb needs to come off.
Yeah, he's enforcing biological reality. Gangrene isn't just a localized problem, right? It's a systemic threat.
It spreads.
It spreads rapidly. When tissue dies, it becomes necrotic. It begins to release toxins and bacteria directly into the bloodstream. If you leave a necrotic limb attached to a vulnerable body, that localized death will rapidly spread, leading to sepsis, multi-organ failure, and death.
God.
So Willie understands that biological survival often requires brutal subtraction. Gloria is prioritizing the emotional comfort of seeing her son with 2 arms, while Willie is prioritizing keeping the host organism alive, even if it means mutilation.
Wow. Yeah, and this argument over the arm opens up a much wider, scathing critique of the modern medical establishment, specifically focused on Jason's former physician, Dr. Wells. Willie points out that given the nature of Jason's fall, there was obvious potential for severe spinal or nerve damage. But Dr. Wells never investigated it.
Never even looked.
Once Jason slipped into the coma, Wells just stamped a coma label on the medical chart and effectively walked away from the granular details of his physical care.
The author is using Dr. Wells to illustrate a very dark reality of systemic triage. In a heavily bureaucratized medical system, triage isn't solely based on the severity of the patient's injury. It's heavily influenced by economics and perceived utility.
Money.
Always money. Willie explicitly notes that when the Army stopped covering the mats of medical bills, Dr. Wells's interest just evaporated.
It's the ultimate commodification of human life. Wells looked at Jason, looked at the lack of funding, and decided that the massive investment of time, specialized scans, and resources just wasn't going to yield a return.
Right.
And by return, the system means a conscious, productive, paying patient. He wrote Jason off as a depreciated asset. He missed the nerve damage causing the paralysis because he simply stopped looking for it.
It really forces you to confront the cognitive dissonance that can occur in caregiving professions. A physician's core mandate is to heal.
Right, the Hippocratic Oath.
Exactly. But when a doctor is confronted with a catastrophic case that entirely defies their ability to heal, Or when the financial infrastructure pulls the rug out, it threatens their professional worldview.
Yeah.
To protect their own ego, it is psychologically easier to label the patient as hopeless or static rather than admitting the limitations of the medical system or their own capabilities. Dr. Wells didn't just abandon Jason. He abandoned his own curiosity about Jason's condition.
Which brings us to the core tension of Willie's character. Because during the call, Gloria says to him, "You knew better, Dr. Willie." And Willie immediately, sharply corrects her.
Oh yeah, he shuts that down.
He says, "I'm no doctor." He reminds her that he's an orderly, but his true identity is a medicine man from the Ute Reservation. His approach to healing is rooted in indigenous traditions, not Western medical school.
And that cultural and ideological distinction is the pivot point of their entire dynamic. Dr. Wells represents the rigid, hyper-specialized, insurance-driven Western model. He looks at the body as a biological machine.
Yeah.
If a part is broken beyond repair and the warranty is expired, you stop servicing the machine. Willie approaches Jason holistically. He recognizes that the spiritual, psychological, and physical components of Jason's trauma are inextricably linked. Willie is actively trying to treat the unseen wounds that the hospital ignored.
Okay, I understand the contrast, but I think we have to look objectively at what Willie is actually doing here. We can condemn the systemic failures of Dr. Wells all day, but Willie's actions are objectively terrifying.
Oh, without a doubt.
He's not just giving spiritual advice. He orchestrated the illegal smuggling of a comatose patient out of a modern medical facility. He is currently pumping a highly experimental, unregulated drug barbican directly into Jason's bloodstream in a residential bedroom with absolutely no emergency resuscitation equipment on standby.
It's wild.
He's lecturing a traumatized mother about gangrene while leaving the dying limb attached to the body. This isn't just holistic medicine. It borders on reckless endangerment. I mean, is he a rogue savior stepping in where the system failed, or is he a dangerous enabler feeding experimental drugs to a vulnerable man?
It is a massive ethical quagmire. Willie's intentions appear entirely rooted in a genuine desire to facilitate healing, to bring Jason back from the void. But his methodology is undeniably dangerous. I mean, if Jason has a severe adverse reaction to the barbican, if his heart stops, or if that paralyzed arm turns septic in the middle of the night, Willie's profound spiritual insight is not going to save Jason's life.
Exactly.
He's operating completely without a safety net.
But if you put yourself in Gloria's position, the desperation makes sense. If you have sat beside a hospital bed for 2 straight years, watching your child wither away while the credentialed experts in the white coats offer you nothing but shrugged shoulders and billing statements, your faith in that system breaks.
Totally. When institutional trust evaporates, people seek alternatives, and their tolerance for extreme risk skyrockets.
Yeah.
Gloria isn't making a calculated clinical assessment of Willie's treatment plan. She's operating from pure, primal maternal desperation. The hospital viewed Jason as a defunct biological entity. Willie still views Jason as a human being capable of returning, so she's choosing the man who offers a sliver of hope over the institution that offered none.
Even if that hope is tied to a dangerous hallucinogenic chemical drip. And the immediate visceral consequences of that chemical drip become terrifyingly apparent within seconds, because Gloria abruptly terminates the phone call with Willie because she realizes Jason is waking up.
Right, the transition here is so fast.
Yeah. But he isn't crossing the threshold into a normal, lucid state. He's caught in this horrific liminal space. He's dreaming while his eyes are wide open, and we transition directly into a full-blown hallucinatory breakdown of reality.
The author constructs this sequence masterfully. We aren't just told Jason is hallucinating, right? We are locked inside his sensory processing centers as they completely misfire.
It plays out like a waking nightmare. He's staring at the ceiling and the overhead lantern is swaying back and forth, but there's absolutely no wind in the room.
Right.
Then he physically feels a ghostly phantom breeze pressing heavily against his eardrums. And then the auditory hallucinations start. He hears this subtle giggling coming from the walls themselves, and that giggling rapidly morphs and echoes into full-throated laughter surrounding him.
We are witnessing severe synesthesia here, triggered by the chemical cocktail and the traumatic brain injury.
Synesthesia. Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. Synesthesia is the phenomenon where sensory pathways crosswire. The brain's thalamus, which normally acts as a switchboard to route visual, auditory, and tactile information to their proper processing centers, is just failing.
It's glitching out.
Yeah, completely. The visual anomaly of the swaying lantern is misrouted, triggering the tactile sensation of pressure on the eardrums. That tactile sensation is then misrouted into the auditory cortex, creating the sound of the walls laughing.
Wow.
His brain is frantically trying to synthesize impossible inputs, and the result is an environment that feels alive, animate, and entirely hostile.
And that hostility peaks with the distortion of his mother, because Gloria is standing right at the foot of his bed looking down at him. But to Jason, her face and her head become grotesquely distorted, just stretching and warping.
It's so disturbing.
It is. And, human instinct dictates that when your vision blurs or distorts, you blink to clear it. But Jason realizes that every time he blinks, the distortion accelerates. The image gets worse.
Yeah.
He determines it's actually safer to just force his eyes open and stare. And as he pushes himself up in the bed, the distortion reaches its climax. Gloria completely vanishes, melting directly into the striped wallpaper behind her.
The symbolism here is devastating. The mother archetype, which is, the universal symbol of comfort, safety, and grounding, is twisted into something monstrous and unrecognizable.
Right.
His mind is actively rejecting the very source of his care. When she vanishes into the wallpaper, it suggests this deep subconscious feeling of suffocation. He can no longer distinguish his mother from the architecture of his confinement.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, her hovering presence, her hypervigilance that we talked about earlier, it's become part of the room that traps him. He is entirely alone even when she's standing right in front of him.
And the room itself is disintegrating. The text describes this in a way that feels like a malevolent Salvador Dali painting.
Very Dali, yeah.
He looks across the room at the dresser. The solid metal handle of the drawer simply drops off and falls to the floor. Then there are these artificial flowers, a small clock, and a photograph in a silver frame sitting on top. And right before his eyes, they lose their physical density. They melt together, pooling into what the text calls a colorful soup.
The specific objects that melt are highly significant.
Yeah.
Hallucinations are rarely random, right? The brain uses whatever material is at hand to manifest internal distress.
Okay, so let's unpack those objects.
Sure. The artificial flowers represent a synthetic, stagnant life, which directly mirrors his own existence hooked up to the RV.
That makes sense.
The silver-framed photograph represents his past, his identity, which he currently cannot access because of the amnesia.
Right.
And the melting clock is the ultimate symbol for the breakdown of chronological reality. Time spent in a 2-year coma, followed by time under the influence of heavy narcotics, has just obliterated his internal clock. Linear time no longer exists for him.
He is completely untethered from the laws of physics. And the structural collapse of the room proves it. I mean, the walls actually start to lean inward.
Yeah.
The bedroom door suddenly springs entirely off its hinges. But the detail that really solidifies the breakdown of reality is the window. The glass panes pop out of the frame, but they don't shatter when they hit the ground. Instead, the panes of glass just drift off across the front yard, floating through the air like soap bubbles.
If you think about the cognitive load required for the brain to simulate a hallucination, that floating glass makes perfect sense.
How so?
Well, a shattering window implies violent kinetic energy. It implies an external force breaking in. But a window pane simply losing gravity and floating away implies that reality itself has lost its density. The fundamental barrier between the safe interior and the exposed exterior world has dissolved effortlessly. It's a quiet, profound erasure of boundaries.
But while the room is quietly dissolving, Jason's internal physical experience is incredibly violent.
Oh, yes.
His head begins to swell. It becomes impossibly heavy, to the point where he's forced to squeeze his eyes shut because he's convinced there's an inevitable explosion building inside his skull. And all the while, the walls just keep laughing at his agony.
That sensation of the swelling head is his brain translating severe cognitive overload into a physical sensation.
Like it physically hurts to think.
Exactly. His neural pathways are being flooded with unregulated sensory data, the potent effects of the Barbicane, and the suppressed pressure of his trauma trying to break through that amnesiac wall. He lacks the psychological bandwidth to process it all. So his brain interprets that systemic overwhelm as literal, physical intracranial pressure.
And the walls laughing.
The mocking laughter of the walls is his own subconscious turning against him. It's recognizing his complete inability to maintain control over his own mind.
It's an Alice in Wonderland experience, but stripped of all wonder and replaced entirely by dread. The Mad Hatter isn't pouring tea. The physical walls are laughing at his pain. The Cheshire Cat isn't fading away with a smile. His own mother is melting into the wallpaper.
Yeah, that's a great comparison.
The concept of the childhood bedroom as the ultimate safe haven has been completely corrupted. The trauma has infected the architecture.
And when the external environment becomes that hostile, When the physical sanctuary turns into a torture chamber, the human mind is forced to evacuate.
It has to run.
It cannot sustain that level of panic. It has to find a new reality to inhabit.
Which leads us to an incredibly jarring transition. Jason squeezes his eyes shut against the explosion, and suddenly, the deafening, melting chaos of the bedroom is gone.
Just gone.
He escapes into the eerie, muted silence of a dream world. He opens his eyes and finds himself sitting in the passenger seat of a blue sedan, driving down city streets.
The juxtaposition is severe. Going from a high-decibel, sensory overload hallucination into the controlled humming environment of a car creates an immediate sense of artificial calm. The subconscious has constructed this sedan as an isolation chamber, a mobile fortress to shield him from the sensory violence of his waking reality.
But the calm is entirely superficial because of who is driving the car.
Yeah.
Sitting right next to Jason, dressed very sharply in a light gray suit, staring intently at the road ahead, is his father.
Yeah.
The same father who, in the waking world, abandoned the family 2 years ago when Jason fell into the coma. And Jason's reaction to sitting next to him is fascinating. He doesn't talk to him. He doesn't look out the windshield. Instead, Jason turns his head and hyper-focuses on the side of his dad's face. He stares with microscopic intensity at the tiny flaws, specifically the crow's feet around his father's eyes.
It's a textbook psychological avoidance mechanism. When the brain anticipates a massive threat in its broader field of vision, it will aggressively narrow its focus to a minute, non-threatening detail to manage anxiety. Jason is staring at the wrinkles around his father's eyes because he is absolutely terrified of looking at the road.
Exactly. The text reveals that Jason harbors this intense, incredibly specific dread that if he looks out the windshield, he's going to see a man standing in the middle of the street and his father is going to run that man over.
Yeah.
He is just waiting for the violent impact.
Let's analyze where that specific fear comes from. Jason is a combat veteran with severe suppressed trauma from an incident in Iraq. A sudden, violent collision with a body in the road is a highly specific, tactical fear.
It's a memory.
It is highly probable that this fear of running someone over is a fragmented, bleeding memory from his military service. His subconscious is projecting a traumatic combat memory into the domestic, ostensibly safe setting of a car ride with his father.
So the car isn't safe at all.
No. The blue sedan isn't a safe space at all. It's a vehicle carrying a payload of suppressed guilt and anticipated violence.
But the man in the road never actually materializes in this dream. The anticipated violence doesn't happen. Instead, the father pulls the sedan over, announcing they have arrived at a place for the men.
Right.
They step out of the car and find themselves at the Morrison Denver Cemetery.
A cemetery is an incredibly potent location for the subconscious to use.
Absolutely.
It's a landscape explicitly designed to house the dead, to categorize loss, and to force the living to confront finality. But the environment of this specific cemetery is altered by a recurring psychological element.
Right. The entire cemetery is shrouded in what Jason immediately recognizes as a dream mist.
Yeah.
And this is a crucial piece of lore the author drops in. Jason has been seeing this exact same mist in his dreams since he was a little boy.
Yeah.
It isn't just atmospheric weather. It is a structural barrier within his own mind. It represents the literal boundary between the active dream state and the waking world.
In psychological terms, this mist represents a liminal space. It is the absolute edge of his conscious map.
Liminal space.
Yeah, liminality is the state of being in between. You know, you've left one room, but you haven't entered the next. But what makes Jason's relationship with this mist so terrifying is his childhood realization about what lies beyond it.
The void.
Exactly. He knows instinctively that if he were to walk through the dark edges of that mist, he wouldn't wake up, and he wouldn't find another dream. He would step into absolute nothingness.
It's his brain's conceptualization of non-existence. It's the visual representation of the coma or perhaps death itself. And keeping that void at bay, they walk through the cemetery. They pass through these iron gates, walking toward a modest concrete mausoleum that has narrow stained glass windows. And as they're walking, we get one of the most profound, heartbreaking details in the entire chapter. Jason notices that his left arm aches.
The exact same left arm that is paralyzed, dead, and potentially gangrenous in the waking world.
Yes. In the dream, he reaches over with his right hand and rubs his left arm, and he actually feels the sensation of the touch.
Wow.
He feels his hand making contact with the limb. In the mist-covered landscape of his dream, his paralyzed arm is completely alive. It is physically whole.
If we look at how the brain maps the physical body, this makes perfect sense. The somatosensory cortex is a region in the brain that contains a complete topographical map of your entire body. Every nerve ending has a corresponding coordinate.
Okay, so it's literally a map.
Literally a map. When a limb is amputated, or when the spinal cord is severed and the nerves die, the physical hardware is gone, but the software, the map in the brain, remains entirely intact.
So his brain is just running the old software.
Exactly.
In the dream state, without the physical constraints of his broken waking body, his brain easily fires the old neural pathways, simulating the feeling of a healthy arm.
Right. It's the mechanism behind phantom limb syndrome. Amputees will often feel itching, pain, or movement in a limb that was surgically removed years ago, because the brain is still sending and searching for signals from that specific coordinate on the somatosensory map.
That is wild.
In the dream, Jason's brain effortlessly reconstructs the physical wholeness that the waking world denies him.
But I look at this dream, and it strikes me that his subconscious is playing an incredibly cruel trick on him. I mean, it effortlessly fixes the physical trauma, the dead arm, but it completely immerses him in his emotional trauma.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point.
It forces him to spend time with the father who abandoned him. It's like his mind is performing an aggressive emotional triage. The physical gangrene might kill him in the waking world, but in the dream world, the broken relationship with his father is the primary, agonizing wound that needs attention.
It's a powerful distinction. Reconstructing a physical limb in a dream requires very little psychological effort. The blueprint is hardwired into the cortex. But reconstructing a shattered psychological bond, simulating a relationship that ended in abandonment, requires immense, painful cognitive processing. The mind prioritizes the unresolved emotional loop.
We talked about phantom limb syndrome applied to the physical body, but Jason is experiencing a profound psychological phantom limb syndrome.
Oh, that's a great way to frame it.
His father is the severed limb. The man physically left the family 2 years ago, cutting himself off from Jason's life. Yet Jason's psyche is still constantly feeling the itch of that missing relationship. His subconscious is desperately trying to receive sensory input from a father who is no longer there.
And so the dream acts as a psychological prosthesis.
Right.
Just as an amputee might strap on a synthetic leg to help them navigate the physical world, Jason's mind generates a synthetic simulation of his father to help him navigate the emotional landscape of his trauma.
But it's not perfect.
No, a prosthesis is never a perfect replacement. It causes chafing, it causes its own distinct pain. The dream father allows Jason to interact, but it cannot provide genuine closure or comfort because it is ultimately a projection of his own unresolved grief.
And that grief crystallizes as they walk deeper into the cemetery. They navigate past these grave markers that are stained and darkened by city pollution, which is a striking visual of the modern industrial world encroaching on this sacred, supposedly pristine space.
Yeah, the pollution is a great detail.
They eventually stop at a flat stone with a bronze plaque. The plaque reads, "In loving memory for Emily Matherson."
Emily Matherson is Jason's grandmother. His father, John Matherson's mother.
Right, and this is where the generational disconnect of the scene becomes so stark. Jason looks at the plaque and he reads the date of death, 1976. Jason was born in 1979, 3 full years after she died.
So he never even met her.
He never met this woman. He has absolutely no personal memories of her, only old photographs of her holding his father as a baby. Consequently, as he stares down at the bronze marker, Jason feels absolutely zero emotion. It's just a piece of metal in the dirt to him.
But the reaction of the father standing next to him is the absolute polar opposite.
For a total opposite.
The moment John Matherson looks at his mother's grave, his entire demeanor shatters. He physically collapses. He drops to his knees in the dirt, completely overcome and consumed by a profound, debilitating wave of grief.
And witnessing this collapse triggers an incredible duality of self within Jason. Let's really look at the mechanics of this moment. The text explicitly notes that Jason is occupying his current physical form.
Right.
He's a 30-year-old combat veteran. He has a massive, muscular, oversized soldier's body. He possesses physical mass and strength, but internally, emotionally, as he watches his father break down, Jason regresses.
Yeah.
He feels exactly like a helpless, terrified 7-year-old boy trying frantically to steady his crumbling father.
We are seeing a profound inner child regression. In developmental psychology, a child's foundational sense of security relies on the illusion of parental omnipotence.
The parent has to be the superhero.
Exactly. The parent must be the unbreakable shield against the world. When a child, even an adult child who has been to war witnesses their parent completely emotionally disintegrates, that foundational illusion shatters.
The protector suddenly becomes the
Yeah.
protected.
It is deeply disorienting. Jason's physical armor, his soldier's physique, is completely useless against the emotional reality of his father's vulnerability. He is physically an adult, but emotionally entirely unequipped to parent his own parent.
He rushes forward, grabbing his father, trying to physically hold him up and steady him. But this leads to the heartbreaking climax of the sequence. As Jason is physically gripping his father, the man's body begins to alter. It starts to feel empty to the touch. It loses its density and becomes weightless. And slowly, agonizingly, right before Jason's eyes, while he is desperately trying to hold on, his father fades into absolute nothingness.
It is the ultimate devastating visualization of abandonment.
The text states that as his father vanishes, the disappearance leaves Jason feeling more alone than ever before.
Look at the exact mechanics of why the subconscious forces this fade to happen at this specific location.
Why the grandmother's grave?
Exactly. Emily Matherson's grave represents an inaccessible past. It's a history and a grief that Jason cannot participate in because he wasn't alive yet. The father is consumed by an emotional reality that entirely excludes his son.
Wow.
This highlights the insurmountable emotional distance between them. The subconscious is forcing Jason to stop avoiding the truth. The dream father doesn't die a dramatic death. He simply fades away. He withdraws.
Just like in real life.
Yes. The physical vanishing of the body in the dream perfectly mirrors the emotional and physical abandonment Jason suffered when his father walked away from his hospital bed in the waking world.
Think about what it feels like to hold on to something that is actively deteriorating.
Right.
Imagine you're holding a deeply precious, incredibly fragile old photograph. You grip it as tightly as you can because you are absolutely terrified of a gust of wind taking it away. But your own frantic grip is what destroys it.
Right, the pressure.
The harder you squeeze, the more the paper crumbles, it turns to dust, slipping right through your fingers. And eventually you are left standing there, hands clenched, holding nothing but the exact shape of the absence left behind. Jason can still feel the physical posture of holding his father, but the man himself is entirely gone.
The shape of the absence.
Yeah.
That is precisely what defines Jason right now.
Yeah.
He is a man constructed almost entirely of negative space. He is defined by the missing father, the missing memories of the Iraq accident blocked by amnesia, and the missing neurological sensation in his dead left arm. He's a collection of voids trying to hold itself together.
Which brings us back to the incredible emotional arc we've traced today. We started in the waking world, in a corrupted childhood bedroom, dealing with the brutal biological reality of systemic necrosis, a dead arm, a mother trapped in denial, and a medicine man threatening amputation.
And from that biological threat, we transition through a terrifying failure of the brain's sensory processing, the melting room, the distorted mother, and descended into a dream world.
Right.
A world where the physical body is miraculously, effortlessly whole, but the psyche is forced to endure a repeated, agonizing psychological amputation as the father fades into the mist.
It illustrates something fundamental about how the human mind attempts to process profound compound trauma. It shows us that our ultimate safe spaces, the bedrooms we grew up in, the domestic interiors of family cars, and even the private sanctuaries of our own dreams, can instantly become hostile, weaponized territory when we are carrying unresolved wounds.
Absolutely.
The walls don't protect you, they mock you. Your dreams don't offer an escape. They force you to watch the people you love disappear all over again.
It really underscores the inescapable nature of the subconscious. You cannot lock the doors against your own mind. If you attempt to firewall the trauma, as Jason's brain is doing with the amnesia, the suppressed energy will simply manifest elsewhere.
Is he going to get out somehow?
Yes, it will warp your vision, distort your hearing, and hijack your dreams until the underlying wound is finally addressed.
And that leaves us with a deeply unsettling final thought to ponder. Throughout this deep dive, we've looked at the boundaries Jason's mind has erected. In his dream, that recurring dream mist acts as the final border wall. It's the only thing keeping the absolute void, the terrifying nothingness, at bay. But given the sheer intensity and violence of his waking hallucinations, the melting furniture, the floating window glass, the unbearable pressure in his skull, you have to wonder about the structural integrity of that wall.
The architecture of his mind is visibly cracking under the strain of the experimental drugs.
Exactly. What happens to Jason if that internal barrier completely shatters? What happens if that mist from the cemetery stops being confined to his sleep and begins violently bleeding into his waking reality?
That's a terrifying thought.
If the nothingness isn't just a threat at the edge of a dream, but standing right at the foot of his bed, it is a terrifying precipice, and I am absolutely ready to see where this labyrinth takes him next. But I have to ask you, are you ready for what's coming?
This is Troy. I wanted to thank you for listening and hope that you tune in for my weekly presentation of In Darkness We Sleep. Vocals by Eric Neubauer and Troy St. James. Music and episode art provided by Robert McNichol. I can be contacted directly at troystjames@cox.net. This audio podcast is produced by Troy St. James, copyright 2012. Have a good night.